first presidential debate is tonight at 9 p.m. Good afternoon, I'm Kate Capodanno.
And I'm Matt Weinstein. NCC News reporter Megan Mystery is live in Manhattan on her way to Hofstra University where tonight's debate will be happening.
Matt, Kate, hey, I'm in Tribeca. You can see the World Trade Center right behind me. I've been making my way to Brooklyn today. We're hoping to stop by the Clinton campaign headquarters on our way to Long Island to cover the debate from Hofstra University. Hofstra is actually the first university to ever get 3 presidential debates consecutively. They hosted in 2008 and 2012. This year's debate is 90 minutes, moderated by Lester Holt, and it'll be broken up into 3 different sections: America's Direction, Achieving Prosperity, and Securing America, which leaves room for really any type of question to be answered. We're very interested to see what kind of policy plans will be unveiled. You know, Hillary Clinton, she already has plans for 39 different issues on her website, where Trump just has brief plans for 9 issues. So we're hoping to see if Trump will unveil any policy plans or anything like that. But I will have more coverage for you, and coming up at 4:45 and later tonight on Twitter and on NCC News. Reporting live from New York City, I'm Megan Mystery.
NCC News reporter Megan Mystery is live in Brooklyn with our top story.
Campaign headquarters right now. Debate is slated to start at 9 p.m. It'll be 90 minutes, and it'll be divided into 3 different sections: America's Direction, Achieving Prosperity, and Securing America, which leaves room for Lester Holt to ask questions about virtually anything. He faces a pretty hard challenge tonight, as he is going to have to balance asking fair questions to them both, but also fact-checking Trump. I know Washington Post put out an article in early July saying 78% of Trump's claims have been found mostly false or false. So Lester Holt will be balancing that, and that's not the only challenge at the debate tonight. There's a lot of huge challenge for Clinton going into it, and Trump, to win over supporters who are on the edge, especially as the gap continues to close in polling. It's a pretty tight race headed into November. Reporting live from Brooklyn, I'm Megan Mystery.
Good evening, welcome to NCC News Elections Unveiled coverage of the first presidential debate. I'm Kristen Edwards, and tonight we will be taking a look at how candidates Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump performed in their first head-to-head debate. I'm joined in studio by Professor Chris Farrisee. He is an assistant professor at Syracuse University in political science. We are also joined by 3 NCC News reporters, Mike Carter, John Serio, and Megan Mystery via Skype, who are at the debate at Hofstra University in Hampstead, New York. Hey guys, can you hear us?
Yes, we can. Kristen, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. So, let's get this started with some key moments. What are some of the things that really stuck out to you guys in tonight's debate?
Well, it's been a pretty eventful event tonight. What are some of the key moments that you guys had?
I thought Donald Trump really did a good job being on the attack. Hillary pressed him a lot, tried to get under his skin. Yes, he did have some situations where it seemed like he was a little flustered, but ultimately I think he did a good job of keeping his composure. Michael?
I think coming into the debate, a lot of the talk about tonight was going to be Donald Trump's demeanor. And I thought he started off very, very kind of presidential, I think is the word that a lot of his supporters were looking for. Very reserved, kind of didn't pull the claws back. But then you saw very quickly he went into the offensive and really started attacking her. Wouldn't let Clinton finish her remarks, and so he wouldn't let her get her remarks off, and he made sure to get his punches in.
Well, I think that those were some of the biggest moments of the debate. The key moments were truly the one-liners between the two of them, coming back, hitting the other, the quick punch, saying, oh, this is your point. Well, I can refute that. Here's how it was for me.
No, I totally agree. Very, very strong performance by both, but I believe Trump did excel a little bit tonight.
All right. What about you, Kristen? What did you think were some of the key moments?
Well, for me, I think that Lester Holt really pressed Donald Trump a lot in some of his questions. He targeted certain questions about the birther issue to Donald Trump, and some of the questions about how, he said that Hillary doesn't look like a president. So I think it was interesting to kind of see that from Lester Holt as a moderator. What do you think about that, Professor Farrisee?
Well, the debate really is a job interview for President of the United States, more than it is about, theater or body language. And on that issue, I think that Secretary Clinton performed much better than Donald Trump tonight. I think that he struggled when asked about his own taxes. He struggled when asked about the birther issue and was really put on the offensive. So what our on-the-ground folks saw as being aggressive, I viewed as him taking the bait and coming across as being pushy up on stage tonight.
Okay. So, piggybacking off of that, do you think that, his persona as a political outsider didn't come across well tonight? You think Hillary Clinton's ability to prepare and her ability, as a career politician, do you think that worked well in her favor?
I think it did. I mean, tonight the bar for Donald Trump was different than Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton has been on the national stage for over 20 years. She's performed in these debates before. Donald Trump had never been one-on-one in a debate before. And there are a lot of Americans who might be inclined to vote for Donald Trump who wanted to tune in tonight to see, does he have the temperament to become president? And I think, a moment that people are going to take away from this is when he shouted at Secretary Clinton that he had a better temperament, which obviously evidenced that maybe he doesn't. So moments like that, I think, are not going to hurt him, are not going to help him and hurt him going forward.
So what do you guys out there think about Donald Trump's temperament tonight in that kind of outburst that he said that I do, have better temperament than Hillary Clinton does?
Going back to Donald Trump's temperament, he did have a couple outbursts when he did say, I do have the temperament of a president. But for the most part, I thought he held his temper pretty well. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And, getting back to what I was saying before, you saw a different Donald Trump tonight than you saw in the lead up in the primaries. If you remember back to the primaries when he would attack Jeb Bush, he'd say, you got low poll numbers, Bush, lying Ted. You didn't have a lot of ad hominem attacks towards Hillary Clinton, which I thought, as far as a strategic approach, he needed to do. He couldn't come off as a bully tonight. And I don't think he did. The offensive attacks, look, if you're a Trump supporter, I think you come away from tonight thinking, you know what? He knocked it out of the park. He looked presidential, and he got in those zingers when he needed to. If you're not a Trump supporter, I'm not sure, either side, anything either candidate could have said in such a divisive race could have changed your mind tonight. But, coming in with an open mind, myself, I'm looking at Donald Trump thinking, if I'm an undecided voter, I'm looking at a guy who talks about, look, we're here in New York City. We're just outside of New York City. A lot of the folks who are around us tonight flew into LaGuardia Airport, flew into JFK Airport. Donald Trump tonight talked about those airports and said, look, if you're flying in from Dubai, you're coming in from a world-class airport. You're flying in from all around the world, Germany. You're coming in from these unbelievable places that have infrastructure that has now superseded the United States. The United States was at once the pinnacle of success as far as infrastructure worldwide.
So, a lot of what I'm hearing from you, Mike, is that, Donald Trump's persona worked for you tonight. But what about Hillary Clinton? What do you think worked for her as far as her composure and her ability to stand there, smile, address him in a poised and presidential way?
So the challenge that Secretary Clinton had tonight was to reintroduce herself to the American public and to try to convince independents who are turning in. And that's the audience that's going to be convinced by tonight. One thing to put in context here is we live in a very polarized time. There are a lot of people who watch tonight who have already made up their minds and will not be convinced. They are watching this like a sports event, like people might watch Syracuse basketball. But for independents who are tuning in tonight, they wanted to see how Secretary Clinton could do under the hot lights with the breadth and depth of issues that were presented tonight. And on that issue, I think that she showed a lot of policy knowledge and also kind of controlled the tempo and controlled the rhythm of the debate tonight.
So to that point, I think we counted about 40 different times that Donald Trump interrupted her.
Yes. So
how do you think she handled that? I think she didn't, attack him back or really raise her voice at all. Do you think that worked for her in her favor?
I think so. I think it came across that her team and her expected the interruptions and kind of just let that glance off her and then refocused on whatever point she was making. So those interruptions didn't sidetrack the point she was trying to make about her policy ideas.
So what about you guys that out there in the field? We just talked about how, Hillary Clinton did have some sense of composure when Trump constantly attacked her and was on the offensive. So what do you think about her and how she smiled and held herself when he was attacking her?
Hillary Clinton did a really good job of holding her composure tonight, even when Donald Trump was attacking her. And that was something that we could see a lot of crowd reactions for. We were just outside of the Fox stage where they were projecting the debate live for a crowd of Hofstra students. And sometimes when Donald Trump would throw in a zinger, throw in a one-liner, you'd hear the crowd cheer, but you'd hear it again when Hillary did the same. You'd hear snaps, people talking about how well Hillary held it or how well Donald held it when that was happening. So I think they both did a pretty good job of holding their composure. John, what do you have to say about how Hillary conducted herself tonight?
Well, let me touch upon the whole crowd atmosphere. I was very surprised. Typically you see in mainstream a liberal college setting, you kind of expect a pro-democratic side in a slant. I was seeing almost like a 50-50 here. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but it seemed like it was a very even split, and I was very surprised by that. What did you guys think about that?
You mentioned the zingers. Hillary she kind of started off with trumped up trickle down economics, talking about Trump's economic plan. And Professor, actually, I wanted to talk to you about Donald Trump's economic plan. He champions himself to be a man of the middle class, the proletariat. Do you think, though, he can actually or has any interest in following through on these economic platforms that he set forth during his campaign?
Okay, so I think Trump was effective in the beginning, reaching out to middle-class concerns about trade. If there is one positive from Donald Trump tonight, it was early on when he was able to really hit the trade issue, and I think hit it effectively in a way that spoke to not just middle-class families, but middle-class families in Michigan and Ohio and the Midwest and the Rust Belt. Some of these states who are going to be decisive in the Electoral College. So I do think that was effective. Now, some of the shine of his early strong performance talking about trade, I think, was hurt in the debate about taxes. Not only about his own taxes, but how that related to his tax plans, which give most benefits to the rich and include tax loopholes that specifically help real estate developers like himself.
So, how do you think this, Hillary Clinton referred to it as a top-down approach. So how do you think that voters are going to respond to that sort of economic policy that he's laid out?
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, she tried to link that policy with the failed economic policies of the W. Bush administration and that as a cause for the Great Recession. So we'll see if that charge sticks.
And hearing about, how you guys down there have the Hofstra University students, screaming and really cheering around for Donald Trump. So do you think that they evaluated his performance rather than his policy? Because again, we really did not hear too many details. We didn't get into the nitty-gritty and the points of things that he truly wanted to do. It was just the same things that he's been saying this whole campaign.
Yeah, so we were actually able to talk to a few Trump supporters, and they did talk about his performance and his policy plans. Mike, I know you specifically talked to a Trump supporter. You want to talk about that?
I did. Chris Burke, it was his 18th birthday today. He will be voting for Donald Trump. His first ever vote will be cast for Donald Trump come in November. But, I asked him, what's important to you tonight? And two issues that I thought were important to everyone on this campus. It's ironic we're at a college campus, and two of the most important issues for young people are healthcare, how are they going to pay for that, and student loans. And neither of those issues were discussed tonight. I thought that was a big miss across the board, and I think by both candidates to not even discuss those issues and where they stand on those issues and really drive home, I can help you young people. Vote for me, and here's what I'm going to do for you as far as these two major issues in your life. Well, you know what? I thought that was a big miss by both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton.
there may have been a brief mention of student loans, but very quickly in passing. No in-depth conversation about that at all. I spoke to another Trump supporter as well, Alana Jr. here at Hofstra. He basically told me he thought Hillary outperformed Donald Trump tonight, but he didn't think he was swayed at all. He didn't think Hillary did enough to convince him. But ultimately, he was telling it like it is. He thought Hillary did a better job. That's a debatable topic. I personally don't think that was the case, but you do see a little bit of give and take on the supporting stances here at the Hofstra University.
Yeah, and for the most part, the students who were watching in that watch group, it appeared that like if they came in wanting to vote for Donald Trump, they left more secure in their vote for Donald Trump. Same with the ones for Hillary Clinton. If they came in with a notion that they were going for Clinton, they came out stronger for Clinton. But those who came in kind of on the edge, they left even more confused. I talked to 2 or 3 voters like that. You know, they were unsure if they actually wanted to make the switch to either or.
Something I thought was interesting tonight, and Kristen and Professor, I'd love to get your thoughts on your take on this. When it came down to the question of, the recent riots that have been taking place around the country, in Charlotte most recently, Donald Trump, rather than kind of open up and try to appeal to those communities of color, really doubled down by saying, look, just today or the other day, I was endorsed by the Federation of Police, Fraternal Order of Police, rather than, kind of open his arms to those communities of color and say, you know what, I'm with you. He really doubled down and say, look, I'm with the police. We need law and order in this country. And I think if you were watching Donald Trump and you happen to be an African American, and I'm not in a position to speak for that community, but if I'm watching him and I'm thinking, all right, I'm willing to at least leave a crack open in the door and say, all right, prove to me that you care about people that look like me. I don't think he got that message across tonight. I think that's another miss for Donald Trump, because you've seen in recent weeks going to churches, really trying to, get the appeal out. Look, he doesn't need to win 90% of the African American vote, but he does need at least a small percentage. And right now it's minuscule, and he's not going to win if he doesn't open that gap, or close that gap.
I agree with that. There was maybe one mention where he attacked Hillary on maybe a quote she said long ago, and he even agreed that maybe she apologized for it weeks later. But that's the only real stance he had on that issue. He really did not, like you said, Michael, he did not go into depth about how he can reach that base. So basically, I think that's a big miss as well.
Professor, what's your take on that subject?
I have to agree that the subject of race I thought was really fascinating tonight in the debate. So first on Donald Trump and some missed opportunities. I would not only echo your sentiments, but point out a couple more issues where when Lester Holt asked him about the birther issue and what he would say to African Americans about the further divide that issue created, what he would offer them, his response was, I'm not going to offer anything. So I thought that was jarring as a statement and not a good moment for Donald Trump. And then at some point, as a way to kind of show his tolerance on race, he claimed abiding by the laws of non-discrimination at a club that he owned in Florida. So I don't think abiding by federal law for non-discrimination against people by race or religion is a sign of enlightenment when it comes to racial issues. But that's something that strangely he pivoted to at some point in talking about race. And just real quick, talking about Secretary Clinton's comments on race, I think it shows the progress that the country has made or is making on this issue when there were phrases tonight about systematic racism, which hasn't been talked about at previous presidential debates, and bias.
So they talked about how Trump is in favor of stopping and frisking, and how, Lester Holt did mention, that has been ruled unconstitutional, but Donald Trump continued to press and say that he was in favor of that, and that is the law and order that we do need.
Yeah, so that has been ruled unconstitutional, so I thought that was a strange double down too, to kind of insist that it wasn't. But to give light to those issues on a presidential stage is something. And then, I think it shows about how much the conversation has evolved and how much still needs to be discussed. But the fact that we're acknowledging these issues of systematic racism at this type of stage and this type of platform is important.
So did you guys down there at Hofstra get the chance to discuss these topics of race with any of the students? What did they think about the takes that both Hillary and Donald Trump had?
Yeah, so they spent a lot of time during the debate on the stop and frisk policy, kind of actually a significant portion of the time discussing that, going back and forth. Lester Holt interjected at one point. Donald Trump refuted what Lester Holt had to say. They went back and forth, and then when it was Hillary's turn to kind of comment on police and racial tensions there, she said, I think her exact words were, implicit bias is something everyone struggles with, not just police. And I thought that was a good point. We were able to talk to a couple of students about racial issues, and it seemed to be something a few of them were pretty passionate about. What do you guys think about that and how students reacted to comments on either side about race?
Yeah, I think stop and frisk was one of the topics where Hillary Clinton said, and this was another thing that going into tonight, a lot of people were going to be wondering, I think Donald Trump gave his answer that stop and frisk actually did help the crime rate in New York City. And Hillary Clinton refuted that. And she said, fact checkers, get your fact checkers ready. Get ready, everyone. But I think she also, in regards to that issue, she said tonight that, look, and I'm paraphrasing here, but she said, look, it's simple. The facts are facts. An African-American charged with the same crime as a young white man in this country is going to be charged more harshly, and those are the facts. And America needs to open up their eyes to what's going on in this country. And getting back to the issue of Donald Trump kind of missing a beat there, reaching out to the African American community. I think it was just another misstep where he wasn't speaking to that community. He was saying, "Look, I'm with the police. If you had any doubts, I'm with the police. Vote for me if you're for law and order."
It's interesting. It's like a different strategy for each candidate. Donald Trump went for the numbers approach. He tried to throw numbers at the audience and try to will them to his side. Maybe talking about how New York City went from 2,200 homicides down to 500. Whether those facts are true or not, I guess Lester Holt will have to do those checks himself. But
I almost say, John and Megan, I would say that, given the recent events happening in Charlotte and in the various cities across the United States, it was almost like Donald Trump was kind of reaching out and saying, look, America, look what's happening right now. The country is going to hell. I'm the one that's going to help it. I'm going to be the one to solve this issue, and we're going to bring back law and order to the United States. And if you don't want to see riots in your cities, well, I'm the person who's going to bring law and order back.
Chicago was a big topic as well. Don't forget about that. He mentioned about 3,000, 4,000 deaths.
Were a little off.
I don't know.
Way more than that just in the last 6 months.
Right. Comparing Chicago with Afghanistan is a risky move by Donald Trump. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I don't think it was a comparison that necessarily should have or needed to be made, but his point of Chicago is true, and that's kind of what brought into the gun violence section. I know Lester Holt started asking questions about regulating gun sales and everything after that. But Chicago is an important talking point, as well as Tulsa and as well as Charlotte. Those are all cities that are dealing with very similar issues as the rest of America is seeing as well. Racial issues, guns in racial communities, socioeconomic issues. They all tie in together. And I think it was important for him to bring it up, not necessarily throw around the numbers, but definitely mention Chicago so that it could be a talking point.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a public debate happening in this country right now, and you're seeing it. You see it every Sunday on the NFL field. You have folks who are kneeling during the national anthems. I don't think that was discussed tonight as well. Look, there are more important issues than Colin Kaepernick kneeling for the national anthem, but there are professional athletes, there are students in colleges like here at Hofstra who find these issues very important. I felt like the amount of time they spent on the racial divide that has been becoming even more prevalent as the weeks turn into months, and over the last year, since we started this presidential campaign, since Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton announced that they were running for president, this country has almost been flipped upside down as far as the racial divide, the Black Lives Matters protests. Everything has kind of been really amped up in the last year. And no matter which side you stand on this issue, there's no debate over this is a discussion that needs to be held, and it needs to be held and the highest form of debate, which is a presidential debate. And I felt like it needed more, it should have been paid more attention to, because this is what everyone's talking about.
This all the time we have for this evening. Thank you to Professor Farisi for joining us. Thank you to Mike, John, and Megan for your commentary from Hofstra. This has been Elections Unpeeled for NCC News. I'm Kristen Edwards.